All right, great. So today we have Ryan Jeffery, VP of Biz Dev at Belly. How you doing, man?
I'm doing well. How about yourself? Good to be here.
Awesome. I'm doing really good as well. I remember we met at the Food Service
Yeah,
Social Media Universe Conference.
here in Chicago. That's right.
Yeah, and that was actually my first I guess food service specific conference,
Yeah.
and first time I got to interact with a bunch of franchisees and people selling into the food service industry as well. So that was definitely an interesting welcome experience for me.
Yeah, it was. We've done a couple of those in the past, but that was one of the first ones that we've done as well. And obviously, it was right here in Chicago in our backyard, so it felt like we had to have a presence. But those are always. It depends on which ones you can get to, and obviously, there are some that are better than others. But it's good for making these types of connections. There, I think that's the most important part of those.
Yeah, man, here we are, over a year later.
Yep.
So tell me, tell everyone a little bit about yourself. Where are you from, and maybe just a real quick 30-second cliff notes on your life before you started working at Belly.
Sure. Sure. So originally from Madison, Wisconsin. So a Midwest guy, born and raised. Been in Chicago now for about 4 years or so. Started actually in the VC side of things. So worked at Lightbank, which is a consumer venture capital firm here in Chicago. Most well known for their backing of Groupon. A couple other major investments as well that they made, and was brought on as an early analyst at Lightbank. Helped kind of transform their consumer technology investments and work with the portfolio companies that we brought on. When I was first hired, we had maybe 5 investments that we had made. By the time I left, we had about 35.
Nice.
So worked very closely with the investments that we made in the kind of marketing, business development, even hiring, recruiting, from idea stage all the way up through iteration to launch to growth, but was, quite frankly, an inch deep and a mile wide with a dozen different companies, and really wanted to entrench myself, and knew when I started at Lightbank, knew that I wanted to be more in an operational role. So took the knowledge that I had gained from my couple years of experience at Lightbank, and helped found Belly, which we can get into in a little bit, but have been now at Belly for about 2 years or so, focused on business development, and focused on creating more value for our businesses. And it's kind of transformed, since the early days at Belly when I initially started. And initially moved from Lightbank into the realm of kind of the entrepreneurial role. It's really transformed my role here specifically, and our business in general has grown from 5 to now over 105 in just the last year and a half or so.
That's awesome.
So extreme amount of growth, but also extreme amount of experience that comes with that, I think, which is interesting.
That's
And
awesome.
fun.
That's awesome, man. So tell me about when you started at Belly, what the product was, and what it does today.
Yeah, so we set out with a very simple problem that we wanted to solve. We saw that a lot of small businesses that we talked to and that we saw at Lightbank, specifically while I was there, they didn't have a very good way of retaining the customers that walked in the door. We saw great tools for customer acquisition, and I think being in the same building and working with the folks of Groupon and similar people in this space, you see a lot of companies that are doing great things for customer acquisition. What we didn't see were great tools for retaining those customers once they walked in the door. We didn't see great digital tools for allowing those small businesses to then connect with those customers after they walked in the door. And that was the problem that we set out to solve. And so we developed a technology that sits on a tablet in store. We provide everything that a small business needs in order to run a more effective loyalty program. So they have the ability to offer very unique, personalized rewards that actually gets their customers excited about walking in the door again. So the ability to, punch the owner of the comic book store in the stomach if you come in enough times. You know, that doesn't work for a high-end boutique.
Whoa,
It does
that
work.
sounds like an awesome reward.
Right, it does work for that comic book store, right? You know, the ability to name your own sandwich at your favorite deli, the ability to shave your barber's beard, or go on a cupcake date with the cupcake girl behind the counter.
Oh my gosh, if that
Those,
there's so many cupcake stores that I would be
I
all
know,
about
right?
that.
I know, right? So those are the types of rewards and engagement that we really wanted to facilitate in store. And you think about how our product has transformed from the initial kind of solution, which was strictly loyalty and rewards, to what we offer today, which is an entire platform that really enables a much more advanced ability for these businesses to connect with their customers in an online way. So if you think about the the traditional retail experience, it's mostly offline. You walk into that business and you may be on your phone. You may have been acquired by that business by, say, Google or Foursquare or Yelp or any of those digital tools that brought you into that business.
Mm-hmm.
But once you walk in the door, that connection is essentially lost, right? You have no way to understand and connect with that business. That business really doesn't have a way to connect with you. And so what we do is that tablet in store allows that business to then connect with that customer in a much deeper way, and really enables them to then promote to those customers after they leave that store as well, and really bridge the offline to online connection that is in store.
Totally. I mean, this is the rewards card for my favorite coffee shop.
There you go.
And if I lose this, I'm pissed.
Yep.
Because I'm not getting my, I had 6 coffees and I needed 4 more and now I'm not. But that store owner, they have no idea who I am. They can't email me when they come out with, a new type of cold brew or whatever.
Yeah.
They don't have analytics on all these cards.
Not to mention the redemption rate on those is less than 2%. A lot of people just give them away for the sake of giving them away. They don't really understand why, and we're trying to digitize that experience right there, but then provide a ton of additional value and tools that is much more than just that.
Okay, got it. So the product makes total sense.
Yep.
And I've used it actually. I actually have a belly card on my keyring, and the experience is awesome. I think one of the questions that a lot of people, and single platform, we're obviously playing in a similar ball space and working with local. So, I mean, you have this great solution. You have this great idea for how to really improve just retention, the loyalty experience, the intelligence for a local business. Tell me about the early days of how you got distribution, how you actually got this in the hands of the local businesses. Because there's a lot of people out there that build technology for local and they think that, okay, build it, now they're going to come, and they don't come. So I'd love to hear about that.
And that's a great question. I'm glad you asked that too, because I think, even in the space that we're in, I talk to a ton of businesses that have an idea, and it's all about execution, right? You know this. It's all about executing on that idea, and that requires selling. Quite frankly, in the early days, it was me, our CEO, maybe 2 other guys, one technologist who built the initial iPad app. We were going around and selling to small businesses. We'd go down the street, we'd go in there and talk to them and try to sell them on our solution. We were doing everything in the early days. I remember, talking to our CEO who would go out and install the iPad and literally be sitting around the corner, gluing the lock to the iPad, to the back of the iPad, and then walking in there with it and installing it in person. And it's all about, in those early days, it's all about distribution and trying to get as much traction as you possibly can. And there's really no silver bullet to that except hustling. And really moving as fast as you possibly can to get your minimal viable product. I mean, we developed a MVP that essentially, was buggy. It didn't always work. People had offline check-ins all the time. There were people that, there were issues with it. But we understood that in order for us to scale and grow and prove our product, we'd have to move fast. The local space is something that is very competitive, and we understood that we'd have to be able to provide something that could be flexible and could move forward very quickly. And so we iterated on that product very quickly from the beginning. And I remember our CEO tells this story a lot. where the first business that we installed in was Alley Cat Comics up in Andersonville here in Chicago, not too far from our offices where we're at. It's actually the place where you can go in and punch the owner in the stomach if you come in enough times. That was the first real reward that he wanted to offer. So we installed that business, and that was, again, the first business that we installed. We had an MVP, went in there, talked to the owner. He said, yeah, let's set it up. Let's get it going. We just sat there and watched people come in the door. And we watched how they interacted with the tablet that was sitting at the point of purchase in store. And we saw two people come in. That one person signed up for it. She said, what the hell is this iPad doing here? You explained it to him. She signed up. The owner explained it to her. She signed up. She walked out, and her friend, in the discourse of conversation, friend asked her what was going on, and actually came back in afterwards to sign up for Belly and purchase something with that repeat visit, with that visit when she came back in. And that's when we really thought and said, they sat down and said, we may have something here. There may be something that we can roll out and may work in store. And so from that initial store, we just kind of cycled around the neighborhood and just canvassed and sold the product ourselves and hustled to make it work. We hired a couple salespeople that understood our product, that understood what we were doing, who went out and just tried to gain scale in a couple neighborhoods in Chicago, and it worked. People started using it, and the brilliance with our product, I think, is that yes, we're building a two-sided marketplace in the sense that we're selling to small businesses, and we also need to sell to consumers. But I think by creating a product that consumers want to use and that business want to place next to the point of sale in store allows us to acquire both businesses and those members that are walking in the door, and allows those members then, when they sign up at that one business, they're going around, and our best salespeople are the business owners that we work with and the members that we have. And we're over 1.5 million members across the country, and those people are continuously going into new stores and saying, hey, why don't you guys have Belly? I use it at the coffee shop up the street. I'd love to be able to do my dry cleaning here and use Belly as well. And they're calling us and saying, hey, we want to get on board with Belly because of the members that we've had. So we do have a sales force that we've grown organically that helps us grow. But I think the best thing for us was just creating a product and continuing to build upon that minimal viable product to gain awareness through the great product that we had built. And I think that's essential as you build and sell to small businesses in general.
Totally. I mean, I think in general for a marketplace, if you can create a supply side, if you can essentially really like create an awesome product in one player mode for a supply side marketplace, I mean, the demand will naturally follow. And it sounds like you guys started off on the supply side, really going out and acquiring businesses, pounding the pavement. One thing that I'm just like obsessed with hearing about is really like the idea of like pre-selling and the idea of getting I mean, it's all this like lean startup stuff, but like actually like selling something before you build it and getting kind of like the buy-in. So did you guys, when you started engaging merchants, and I understand there's probably a ton of insight and crossover with Lightbank and Groupon, but did you guys first approach the merchants with an MVP, or I mean, did you have like a PowerPoint presentation where if you clicked the certain buttons, it looked like it was working? I mean, tell me a little bit, like really how slapped together this was.
So hold on, the lights went off real quick. This is what happens when you're a startup still. The lights go off on you every once in a while. So it's a great question. So we didn't initially build our product until we talked to hundreds of business owners. So we went out there and pre-sold them on the idea of what we were trying to do. And I think that's where the real vision for, and I should say, so the original or the product that we have now, Belly, came from an idea that we had early on, which was more about check-ins to win a random thing in store. So it's more about the original name was actually Belly Flop when we initially started back in the day. This is way back in the days, 2 years ago now. But it was called Belly Flop, and the idea behind Belly Flop was you'd go into a store, check in on your mobile device, and you'd either win something, you'd have a chance of winning something, or you wouldn't. You'd flop. in store, and be like a 1 in 20 chance. The business would be able to determine what those odds were through talking to business owners about that idea. And just going out and canvassing the streets, quite honestly, and just talking to as many people as we possibly could about what we were trying to build and what we were trying to provide to them. We iterated on that product and built something that what they wanted was a way to actually verify that people were in store. And so that's where we came up with the idea to put it on a tablet that would sit right next to the point of sale in store, or sit essentially on the point of sale in store, that allowed people to come in and check in where that transaction was taking place. And really what, the feedback that we got before we even built anything was that they were looking for a way to connect with their customers. They had great ways to acquire those customers in the door, but what they told us was once they walk in that door, we have no way to really connect with them. And so to be able to have some sort of digital device in store is what they needed and what they were looking for. And so we used that feedback and just talking to people. And, I tell people all the time, just from my VC days as well and working at Lightbank, that the best feedback that you're ever going to get isn't from your employees or from your board. It's from the customers that you're trying to sell to. And so we went out and that's where we got our feedback, and the majority of our feedback came from them, and just being able to utilize that to then build our product that we can go back and show them and say, hey, this is what we have. And again, it was an MVP, and I think there may have been some iterations even before that were just some slides that showed them this is how it would work, and this is some of the rewards that you'd be able to offer. I think that was essential to understanding what type of market fit we needed to fill in order to grow and scale quickly.
Got it. Okay, so let's talk about scaling. So, yeah. All right, so it sounds like there's a certain point where you saw people interacting with it, and you're like, okay, we might have something here.
Sure.
Tell me about I guess, about the initial scaling, and then I'd love to then talk about kind of like, how to really achieve, scalable distribution through some of the business development relationships you're working on.
Yeah, so our focus early on, and this was in the first couple of months of our business, was just direct sales, and that was done by me, our CEO, our VP of sales. We hired, started to hire a couple people additionally that could just go out and do outside sales for us, and that was the main distribution, and continues to this day to still be one of our main distribution methods is just direct sales.
And is that all outside sales, or is it a combination of inside and outside? And if the latter, when did you start doing inside?
Yeah, so it was outside sales for probably our first, I want to say our first 6 to 9 months was strictly outside sales. So we scaled in Chicago. So what we did is scaled in Chicago first. We concentrated on hitting tipping points in the specific market of Chicago. Expanded to Austin was our second market that we launched in February of 2012. But we didn't do that until we felt like we had penetration in Chicago. And we did that all through direct outside sales. When we launched Austin, what we did is we had what we call a parachute team that will fly into a specific city to open a market, and they'll do direct outside sales as well. And it was around that time that we started to test inside sales as well. And our product is very visual. You see the, you want to see the iPad, you want to touch around, kind of navigate around on the iPad. You want to be able to show that to a business owner. And so what we kind of started to formulate was a hybrid inside-outside model that allows our inside team to call on the markets where there's an outside presence that would then set up appointments and then go in and actually show that business how it works. And so we've kind of developed that and obviously continued to test and work different methods for allowing us to really get in front of that business owner. And this, working in the local space, business owners are very difficult to sell into, right?
Yeah.
It's very difficult to get in front of them. And so we needed to be able to find unique ways in which we could get in front of them at the optimal time. And that was a mixture of inside-outside sales that we've kind of developed over the last year and a half. And it's not perfect, right? It never is. I'm sure you guys, even,
always
large
going to be a bottleneck with local. Always.
Exactly. I think that there's a huge opportunity in terms of kind of getting some inbound sales as well from businesses. So getting in front of them, even if it's not sales specific, but getting in front of them while they're doing other activities, whether it's on on the web or even at some events, getting in front of them that's not directly while they're in their own business, I think can be important in trying to affect what that business owner is thinking in terms of getting to them at the opportune time in order to sell to them. But there's no silver bullet. I mean, you can put some process and structure around it, which we've done over the last year or so. But it's always a challenge, and you know this probably more than anybody, right?
Yeah, it's a total challenge. I mean, there's always the bottleneck of getting the decision maker to commit to a meeting and then actually to show up for the meeting when you set the meeting.
Yep.
And then, eventually you have to close them. I'm curious. So it sounds like, for you, the sales process is you have an inside team that's focused on setting the meeting, and then you have, because your product is so visual, you have somebody that's basically, once the meeting is set, going to go in and close in person.
That's in some of our core markets. That's absolutely right. So because it is such a visual product, we want to, and just because being outside and talking to them in person instead of over the phone is everybody knows is much better way to close a business when you're in person than it is over the phone. We were able to close over the phone, but I think it's much more effective when you're in person, and that gives us an advantage. I think when we can have resources that can go in and talk to these businesses in person to close them over the phone. To touch on, or to close them in person, I should say. To touch on one of the things that you asked earlier, which is how have we kind of advanced in our selling process and in terms of business development for me. So we were fortunate enough that as we grew and as we built networks in Chicago, that we had a lot of inbound interest from a lot of enterprise players. So we'd have a lot of franchisees and even corporate players coming to us and saying, hey, we want to take advantage of the network that you've created and the technology that you have. And so that provided an additional avenue for us to sell and distribute our product. And so, we have inbound enterprise channels, and now we're effectively going after a lot of enterprise clients that we never would have had or never would have thought we would have had when we initially started our company, that are utilizing our product in store to connect with their customers. And I think that just proves that businesses of any size are looking for ways in which they can, first of all, understand who their customers are, and then find ways in which they can market and promote to those customers in an effective way. And I think that has given us an advantage and allowed us to scale a little bit more rapidly too, to be able to sell to these enterprise clients, get them on board. And a lot of other small businesses see that too, because they're going and shopping at these locations, seeing Belly installed in these particular businesses, and then wanting to get it for their business. So a lot of it's word of mouth, press, those things as well. But it all comes down to just ensuring that we're showing the product as the optimal time for these business owners to understand what it is that we're doing.
Yeah, definitely. So I know for us, they're selling the enterprise sale and the local business sale, the person who's making decisions wants two very different things. Mm-hmm. And I'd be curious to learn from you kind of, what's really important to these enterprise accounts that are reaching out saying we want Belly. Is it the same thing? Is it something different? How do you have to position the product differently for the enterprise sale versus the mom and pop pizza shop down the street or whatever it may be?
Yeah, so it's much more about ROI. For enterprise clients, it's much more about the data, understanding the analytics, the metrics. How is it shaping their, quite frankly, how is it shaping their balance sheet? Is there a return on the investment? Are we driving people back in more frequently? Can we prove that we're driving people in more frequently and increasing the amount of transactions that are taking place in those particular stores? I think there is an element, we find there is an element of being able to reward those customers and providing a better experience in store. But when it comes down to it, it's much more about proving that return on investment. And that's something that we've had to develop as we've scaled as well. And it's beneficial to the small businesses as well, because not to say that they don't understand that and they don't look for it, But for the enterprise clients, it's much more about the data analytics behind it. I think working with those types of clients has made us more prepared for dealing with a lot of the businesses that we work with on a smaller scale as well, which is good.
Sure. And who specifically is the enterprise sale typically to? Like, are you talking to marketing? Or are you talking to, customer experience or whatever it is? Who are you typically talking to?
Yeah, so it is different with every client that we have. Some of them have innovation teams that are specifically working on new initiatives in stores, and a lot of times that's who we're dealing with on a one-to-one basis. Oftentimes our approach in general has been a bottom-up approach, and when I say bottom-up approach, I mean we generally start working with the franchisee. They'll come to us. We'll sell into a franchisee at a local chain, work with those specific chains for a couple of months, be able to prove that data, and essentially utilize those chains as a pilot to then go to the marketing, the CMO of that enterprise chain, to be able to sell into them and say, hey, this is what we've done with these 10 chains in this specific city. Translate that to your entire base of stores across the country, and this is what we're going to be able to do. And so really having that bottom-up approach and effectively moving it forward without that connection, because you're not really going to be able to get that connection if you just cold call into them and say, hey, we have this solution. I don't know how it's going to work for your business because your business is different than all these others. If you can show, hey, we have data and analytics around what happens in your specific store, that means the world to them, and that's actually being able to show value and data right up front.
One thing that I really like about your product is, you're tied to a transaction, so you typically can quantify. It sounds like you guys actually can do a really great job of quantifying how much value you drive to an extent. Is that a correct statement?
So we can show how we're driving behavior in store. So we obviously understand the importance of being tied to the transaction in store. We think that's super valuable. But in order for us to hit scale, it was impossible for us to integrate with every POS that's out there. It just wouldn't have been an efficient use of our time. And so were we able to understand and provide analytics around visits in store and how we're increasing the amount of visits that take place in store. So we can say, hey, listen, these customers that have only been coming in 3 times a month are now coming in 5 times a month. And the average time between visits, we're actually able to decrease. I think those types of metrics, in order to prove ROI in store, is effective for those businesses. And I think you think about loyalty in general, it's not $2 off on your bank statement at the end of the month, right? It's being able to connect with those customers in store while that transaction is taking place. And so while we understand the value of kind of SKU level data, it's much broader than that in the sense that we're able to track and influence behavior around frequency of visits and getting people to come back in more often and more frequently, and then showing that data that supports that to be able to prove an ROI and a lift in sales.
Sure, that makes total sense. And I'm curious how you benchmark initially, right? Because if you're saying we're able to drive this customer to your store this many more times, well, what data set are you comparing it against? Do they even have that data set?
That's a good question. And a lot of the businesses we work with, quite frankly, don't, right? There are a lot of small businesses that first of all, don't even have metrics on how many customers are coming in their store every day, right? And so when you have that as a baseline for the businesses that you work with, it's hard to provide that data around, all right, well, these customers were coming in this amount of time before Belly and now coming in this amount of times after. What we can show is that right when they install with Belly, we can actually show that the times that they're coming in are decreasing. So we can prove quantifiably that with Belly, people are coming back in more frequently, and not necessarily, in some cases, not necessarily to historical data before Belly, but just after they have data, we're able to drive them in more frequently. With some larger enterprise accounts, they do have that data, and so we're able to benchmark that before and after data to prove that we're actually increasing a lift in overall foot traffic to those particular stores. But it all kind of depends on how sophisticated those businesses are. And when you're working with a very small business, it's difficult to do. When you're working with a larger one that's got a little bit more data, we're able to then utilize that to our advantage to show them how it's working.
Yeah. So one of the things I love about your model in terms of developing these larger relationships is, like you said, it's going and doing a pilot with somebody like, let's just go ahead and say Burger King,
Sure.
is really hard, and could take 6 months to a year even to get a pilot without a contract in
Yeah.
place. And I think it's so brilliant and awesome that you guys are able to essentially do use franchisees as a channel to. There's the lights again.
Yeah, I'm just gonna leave them
You guys
alone.
got to keep
All right.
paying the bill. Start paying the
I know,
bills,
right? It's
man.
terrible.
Uh, yeah. So, you're able to essentially do that pilot in a way that doesn't even have to engage at corporate, which is
Yep.
is awesome. That's a really really cool feature of your product, and something that I think anybody out there who's trying to sell into franchisees should take a look at.
Yeah, and I think again for us, it's what CMOs are looking at, and what these larger enterprise locations are looking at is the data that backs up that it's going to work. If they're going to
Right.
take a chance on a startup, if they're going to take a chance on a new innovative product, they need to understand that it's going to pay off. Because a lot of who we're dealing with, they just want to look good to their boss, right? They
That's
want to be
it.
able to prove up the chain that they can work with somebody like us and that it's effective in store. And so if we can go in and just with data, with a deck that says, hey, this is what's going on in these 10 Burger Kings, all right, then that means and translates up the chain to be able to say, all right, well, I know that this is going to work. It's much less of a risk then for me to take a chance on somebody
Right.
that's doing an innovative thing in their store. So that's kind of the basis for us having this bottom up approach, and it's worked out well for us so far.
That's awesome. That's
Yep.
awesome. So I guess the last thing that I want to talk about with this business development stuff is, we talked a little bit about channel partnerships,
Yep.
and there's a lot of people out there that have a customer base that would be incredibly that this product would be amazing for, and incredibly complementary with. Have you guys started to explore these types of relationships yet, or even resellers?
Yeah. Great question. So something that we're actively exploring. We want to have those conversations. We see that there is value in doing that because again, our product can be sold to small businesses, large businesses alike. There are a lot of complementary solutions and value adds that would work well with our solution as well. I mentioned this earlier, but what we're doing is providing a platform, and we want to continue to provide a platform that other people can build on top of, that other people can take advantage of with the tablet that we have in store and that digital connection. So we want other people to work with us to sell to these small businesses, and if that means teaming up in terms of sales, opening up our API and allowing people to build on top of it so that they can go and sell their tools to these small businesses with what we're providing as well. Those are the conversations that we want to have. In terms of channel partnerships, resellers, those relationships just take longer to establish.
Yep.
And nailing down the economics of it is something that is just, the cycle is just a little bit longer. And so we're having those conversations. But we haven't really been able to have those conversations until the last 6 months or so because of our growth in our product and what we wanted to do concentration-wise in terms of selling via direct sales for our sales staff. And I think it's important when you establish a lot of these channel partnerships to understand that they're not going to be, their sole focus isn't going to be your own product, right? And so what we wanted to do was ensure that we're providing the best possible tools. If we wanted a third-party reseller to sell our product, we wanted to ensure that our product was, first of all, the best product that we could have out there, and we'll continue to build upon it. But we didn't feel like we had, just an MVP. We didn't feel until recently like we were able to have a product that would be able to be sold on scale by resellers, and we also didn't feel like we had the sales tools that we could allow them to utilize in store. And so a lot of these conversations have been fairly recent, but it's absolutely something that we want to explore and continue to develop as we grow. And I think a lot of that comes just with scale and being able to provide a solution that other people can understand easily and be able to sell, because again, it's not going to be their number one priority. They're always going to be selling their own product first. But if we can provide something that they see value in, they want to communicate to their businesses and they see an economic gain in that, then that's something that then I think it makes sense. And those are things that we're currently working through. So
Totally. I mean, a huge part of channel partnerships is, listen, it's not just do the deal. It's, okay, who's going to sell this?
yeah,
How are we going to get them to understand it? How are we going to get to incentivize them? How are they going to handle customer service? Who's going to handle billing? Once we handle billing, who's going to handle
yeah,
canceling? It's like a zillion things. And
yeah,
that's honestly why, quite frankly, I think the best channel partnerships are always when the product is self-serve,
yeah,
which is the eventual goal. It
yeah,
just is really hard, especially in local, to get there because, you know, quite frankly, a lot of times you have to jam it down somebody, put it in front of
yeah.
somebody's face to get them to see the value because they're so busy, you know, worried about just running their business.
And I think people in business development sometimes make the mistake of thinking that channel partnerships and reseller relationships are all front loaded in terms of, all right, well, once I get the contract done, once I finalize that deal, then it's over, right? And I think that's absolutely the wrong way to approach it. You should be backloading and thinking that the majority of the work that you're going to be doing on these channel partnerships and reseller agreements is down the road, is in terms of providing the right information, is ensuring that people are approaching it the right way, is ensuring that they have the right sales and communication, the right incentives in place once they sell your product. And I think that if you can approach it that way, I think channel partnerships in general are much more successful. And so, as we've scaled, that's something that we're concentrating on as well. And it's not necessarily, all right, well, let's concentrate on just doing the partnerships, getting it in place. It's about making sure that we have all that back-end process figured out to provide the best possible experience that we can for the merchants that they're onboarding.
Totally. And I think, that's always why it's a great idea to initially just do tests.
Yeah.
Do tests, let's do a handshake
Walk before
agreement.
you run, right?
Let's do a handshake agreement. Let's do this with 500, 1,000 merchants. Let's
Yep.
see how your customers take to it. This will help us iron out the kinks because quite frankly, spending 6 months to a year on a relationship that yields like 0.5% penetration is just like, cool, you did a deal with this huge company, but what did you actually get done?
Yep.
And that's, one of the huge challenges that can be mitigated through a test.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree with you 100%.
This is awesome, man. So one last question, and this
Sure.
isn't related to business development stuff, but so I'm in New York and you're in Chicago, and these are, there's a lot of other stuff outside of technology going on, and I'm sure you might be in a similar boat. I literally have probably 3 to 5 people a week, buddies from finance, buddies from consulting. They're like, I want to work at a startup, and I guess I'll do business development because I don't know what anything else means, and I'm obviously a business guy.
Yeah.
So this has compelled me to come out with this online course where it's basically breaking a biz dev, how you can get into this industry and successfully land on your feet in a biz dev job. So if you just had 1 or 2 pieces of advice for somebody looking to break into biz dev, what would those be?
That's a good question. I think first of all, the first thought that comes to mind is in business development you have to be patient, but you have to be able to hustle your ass off. You have to be able to relationships take time to solidify, right? They don't happen overnight. With in sales, some sales jobs. You could sell them in a day or in one meeting. With a lot of the business development and partnership discussions, a lot of the bigger deals that I've done have taken a year to formulate. And so it's first of all being patient, persistent, but doing it in a way that isn't, for lack of a better word, annoying.
Yes.
Right? You have to be able to get in front and pursue those opportunities in a way that is sometimes not very aggressive. And I say that because you can oftentimes be off-putting with some of the business contacts that you have if you are annoyingly trying to get in touch with them or get in front of them. And so I think it's about persistence, but doing it in a way that makes sense. And in a way that shows the interest and passion that you have for making it work. What I constantly want to do in my business development role here is reduce the friction that we have and provide more value to the merchants and members that we have. And I think that if the person that I'm dealing with, or for me, if I'm dealing with somebody else that I want to sell into, if I can be passionate about how we're doing that and provide that up front, that's important for the continuous relationship that you're going to have, because it is going to be an ongoing relationship. It's not going to be something that you're going to solve overnight. It's going to be something that you're going to have to continue to develop over time. And so being patient but persistent, I think, is the most important thing that that you can do in business development, because in different companies you define it in different ways. But I think those are the core things that really separate and establish yourself as somebody that's good at business development, if you can do those two things.
Totally. I think that's such great advice. I mean, there's such an art to patient persistence,
Yeah.
and there's such an art to like maximizing every little window to apply pressure in a non-obtrusive way.
Yeah.
That is just, I mean, that's the name of the game.
Yeah. Patiently persistent. I like that though.
Yeah, no, it's great because, if you're too overeager, if you're too anxious, you're right, you'll come off as annoying and you won't. And whether people like working with and people like doing deals with people they like. So,
Yeah.
maintaining that likability while still making sure to be persistent, because again, just like a channel partnership, this isn't this person's only priority. They have a job to do. They have, a girlfriend, they have a whatever, they have all these other things. And, worrying about getting you your job is not at the top of their list, but, just staying on top of it is so critical.
I think a high percentage of getting things done is just being relatable too, and just being somebody that is always willing to answer questions, even if it's at midnight, 2 o'clock in the morning. Being able to answer questions and get things done, and be relatable and likable to the person that you're dealing with. And so being able to work in extreme different environments with people is going to be beneficial as you establish those relationships. And you have to be analytical. You have to think outside the box. You have to be able to be creative. And I think that's important in any business development role.
Totally. This has been awesome, man. This is such great advice, both from a business development standpoint, company building, and lastly, for people that are looking to break into this industry. So if people want to get in touch with you, where's the best place they can find you?
Yeah, so email just Ryan, RYAN, at bellycard.com. Business development, you live on email, unfortunately, probably too much.
Yes.
But email is the best way right now. I'm on Twitter, all those good things, but email Ryan at bellycard is the best way.
Awesome. And if people want to learn more about Belly, and they have an uncle or a brother or somebody with a local business that needs to step up their loyalty game, bellycard.com.
Bellycard.com. There you go. Or you can go to getbelly.com. That's our business page, getbelly.com or bellycard.com. You'll be able to find information there.
Awesome. Well, Ryan, thank you so much for your time and insight. This has been great. I've learned a lot, and I look forward to hanging the next time I'm in Chicago.
Yeah, absolutely, man. I appreciate the time. Thank you very much. And I'll let you know when I'm out in New York City next as well.
All right, dude. Sounds
awesome.
Good. See ya.
Thanks.